My name is Mary McGillicuddy. I am one of the career development specialists for the College of Global Futures, which includes the School of Sustainability, School for the Future of Innovation and Society, School of Complex Adaptive Systems, and School of Ocean Futures starting this semester. I also have Christina DiCarlo and Allison Gray with me, helping me out, and they're also part of the Career Services team. So we are here. We know why we're here. We are here to talk about interview preparation and strategies. I put basics in the title just as a disclaimer that we can't go super into depth on every aspect of interviewing today, but hopefully you'll get some strategies and tools to help you go more into depth when it's time to practice. So here's what we're going to talk about. I like to kind of break down the process of preparing into a couple different steps, thinking about it as research, prepare, practice, and perform. And then kind of with that performing is follow-up. So we will start at the very beginning. When we say research, we are talking about researching the company that you're interviewing with, who you're interviewing with, and getting really, really clear on what the job is that you're interviewing for, as well as what are the requirements for it, because that is what your interview questions are going to come from, really is the position description. So couple ways to do that is look at the position description. You can use ChatGPT to kind of help you organize or prioritize the things in there. There's some prompts like review this position description and identify the 3 skills that they're looking for, something like that. You'll find out more about the interview format and process when you get the call for an interview. And then also when it comes to getting knowledge on the organization's mission, values, like what they're all about, website is a great place to start. Same with Glassdoor. That's really good for like company culture, which I can show you real quick right here. You sign up, I believe it's free, and you can look at company profiles based, like we'll do Amazon, and then you have these reviews, and that's these are self-reported, so it's not necessarily representative of everybody who works there, but it does give you a good idea of things to maybe think about when you're interviewing and asking questions. And especially if you're getting a job in sustainability, you must look at their sustainability report to see what they are prioritizing and where they're at with their sustainability goals. Just some quick info about interview formats. You can typically expect first interview is phone. Sometimes it's recorded, and it's usually with an HR representative. Sometimes you jump right into a virtual interview or an in-person interview. It really depends on the organization. And then same with who is interviewing you. This is something to get clear on when you are asked to schedule an interview. Sometimes it's just the hiring manager. Sometimes it's everybody on your team is going to be part of it. And knowing this will help you with your research and getting a little clear on what types of things each of the people on the panel or just the hiring manager do at the job. So you can perhaps like reference that during your interview. All right, so once you got kind of lay of the land there, it's time to start preparing specific responses for common questions. Again, looking at the position description is going to really help you. And then there's a couple tools we'll go into after kind of big overview of those common questions. So you can typically expect 3 different types or categories of questions. We'll jump into each of these, but just know they're generally categorized into these 3 types. Traditional, meaning really just getting to know you, what your goals are, who you are. And a very common one is tell me about yourself. And that's usually going to be at the beginning of the interview. It might also include something about tell us about your experience and why you're a fit for this role. walk us through your resume. This is just an opportunity for you to tell your story. Also, because it's at the beginning, this is kind of like your first shot at making a great impression on the interviewers. Really, I'm sure you've heard like a statistic or a stat that people make a judgment first impression of you within like 30 to 90 seconds of meeting you. So this is your time to shine. So on this, aim for a response that's 1 to 3 minutes. Less than 1, you're definitely not providing them with enough information. Over 3, you're going to start losing your audience. Thinking about things to include is keep it professional and related to the job. So in this, even though they say they want to know about you, they just want to know about you as a professional. And then always being authentically enthusiastic and interested about the job. However you share that enthusiasm, it's important to include that. I want to talk a little bit more about this strategy of organizing your answer with present, past, and future. So you actually start with the present first and then work your way back. So thinking about starting with identifying who you are now as a professional, as a student, what you're focused on, and if it aligns with the position, kind of where your passion areas are as well. Just very briefly, you can talk about some of the things you do in your role or in school and some of the accomplishments that are associated with those duties. Then you go back to the past to say kind of how you got to where you are today. For a lot of sustainability focused roles, passion is almost like a prerequisite for the job. Being passionate about sustainability, the environment, social impact is really valued. So you can, in this situation, tell a very brief anecdote about what sparked your interest in sustainability or whatever you're interviewing for. Again, very brief, can be like a class you took in high school, something you saw when you were traveling, and then continue on to say how that continued your interest in education or jobs that you've done. You want to make sure that you're kind of giving just the highlights of your experience and skills, not a regurgitation of your resume, because they already have that. And then finally, it's time for the future part. So this is really kind of talking about why this job, why did you apply, why this company, and that can come down to, again, the values that you researched or the mission of their program or company as a whole, and then how you're going to contribute to that mission or their goals. I want to play an example from Indeed. Let's see if it will show up. It's very short, but it just gives you an idea of what this looks like all put together.
See it all come together. Present. I'm a senior communication major at the State University with an anticipated graduation date of May 2021. I'm currently a publicity intern for a local entertainment PR agency where I execute promotional campaigns for film companies through social media and guerrilla marketing. Past. Over the last 4 years, I've tried to refine my area of interest in advertising and PR. My parents own a small event planning company in my hometown, so I grew up around entertainment and events management. In college, I've participated in graphic design, marketing, and social media internships. Future. Now that I'm graduating, I'm interested in continuing to grow my experience in digital marketing. After reading your job description, I'm excited about the opportunity to dedicate myself to building, planning, and executing digital marketing strategies full-time. I'm ready to leverage and strengthen the skills I've gained in content production, media strategy, and website management to help this company achieve its goals.
All right, so obviously she was reading from a script, which I would not recommend doing.
See it all come together.
There we go. Do your best to make it very conversational. Also use vocabulary that you would typically use in a workplace setting. You don't have to impress them with big words, but I have a handy dandy list of all of the things that I'm sharing in this presentation, so you can watch that video later. It's about 12 minutes. So another common question is related to strengths and weaknesses. I've heard some very clever ways of hiding this question in different words. Basically, something about areas of growth or like things that you excel in, but they want to know really how self-aware you are and what you're doing to improve as a professional. So for each of these, you want to give specific skills or strengths and weaknesses, up to 2 examples per strength and weakness, just to be mindful of time. You also want to be honest. When it comes to strengths, pick something that is really crucial or relevant to the position that you're interviewing for. On the other side, when it comes to weaknesses, you want to pick something that is true, of course, but making sure that it's something that is not like make or break to you doing this job successfully. So just as an example, if a nurse is interviewing, saying their weakness is like checking patient vitals, that's going to be a problem. So thinking of something, a lot of times it can come down to maybe time management or, I don't know, public speaking, but then you're going to talk about how you have worked to improve on that weakness, because that is showing the employer a growth mindset, like I said, self-awareness and eagerness to get better. Same with the tell me about yourself. 1 to 3 minutes is a good time frame to aim for on this. And then especially with the strengths, giving examples of how you've used that strength in the workplace can be really helpful too. So instead of just saying it, telling them, show them how you've used it before. So now we'll go on to everyone's favorite behavioral-based interview questions. Always starts with tell me about a time or give us an example. The reason employers are asking these is they want to get a sense of how you act in a workplace, how you behave, but also getting a sense of how you've used the skills that are on your resume or you've talked about, how you've actually applied them in the workplace, because that's what they're interested in the most. Couple examples for you of the types of behavioral-based questions that you can expect. It really depends on the industry and the organization. But if you read between the lines, you will notice a lot of these questions are getting at sometimes like transferable skills. So a lot of times communication, conflict resolution, that's kind of on the critical thinking side, leadership, and teamwork. So if you really listen to the question, you'll start to notice like, what are they really getting at here? And then that can help you decide on how to respond to the question. So the way you respond to a question is first identifying a story that relates to one of those questions that showcases what you've done, and then organizing your story based on these 4 categories, which, as you can see, stands for STAR, to help you out. So situation can be super high level, just enough to set the scene for the problem and action. So task can be what was the problem or just what did you need to do? And then the action is what did you actually do? Finally, the result can be what is the outcome of the action you took. Sometimes that's not going to be positive. So I also encourage you to say something about what you learned from this situation and how it's going to help you in this new role that you're interviewing for. I notice sometimes students can get a little tripped up with the S, the T, and the A. So let's just think about like movies. Movies always have kind of the same format. So Barbie movie is one example. There were a lot of different areas of this plot that we can talk about. But one thing is, one situation there was Barbie goes to the real world. She comes back. The Kens took over. They're implementing the patriarchy. The task or the problem is she wants to get all of the Barbies back to normal so that they can continue operating Barbie Land as they want. Action, got together, planned a heist. Result, they're able to get Barbie Land back to normal. And maybe Barbie learned some things too, that she didn't have to treat Ken so badly. So very easy example. Let's do a sustainability example. If it will let me go. All right. Difficult situation with a client or coworker. So go into conflict resolution and communication here. So this is long, but you can take a moment to read it. Situation, again, just setting the facts, setting the scene with things that you just need to know. It's not as important as the action that you take. All right, and then the action is very specific. Activity, breaking things down into smaller steps. And they selected this team member to do proofreading. Result being they finished the project ahead of schedule. Everybody was able to contribute. And something you could also add is, again, maybe you learned like how important it is to talk to people and identify strengths, because that's what helps a team succeed. Another way to think about this, if you don't love STAR, think of a car. Just what was the challenge? What was your action? What was the result? But I will say, after doing lots of mock interviews with students and real interviews, the result seems to be the one people forget the most. So if you're gonna remember anything, remember to include the result and what you learned from the story you're sharing. All right, so when it comes to interviewing, I just want to be really clear. We all come from different backgrounds, especially our international students. And the way you communicate in an American interview may feel uncomfortable or going against what you learned. Some of us have been told, like, be humble, don't brag. Sometimes in an interview, especially the way we recommend talking, it may feel like you're bragging. But in this case, consider it you are telling the truth, and you need the interviewers to see who you are as a worker. I would recommend, if you are on a team where you contributed, you can still use I language, like I did this, I did that, rather than I helped someone else or we did this. Everybody knows you have to work with other people to get things done. So it's not incorrect to say you did something. I also want to say, a lot of times you'll see advice to come up with responses to a bunch of different questions, like sample questions. That can be very helpful. However, you never know what questions the interviewers are going to ask you. So to help you prepare for an interview, I would recommend think of some like crucial key stories from either school, work, class projects where you learned something or you used a skill, kind of going back to that slide on teamwork, critical thinking, leadership. Get really, really familiar with that story and the details, and then start thinking about what type of questions could I use this story for? So then when it comes down to the interview, as you're listening to the question, you're like, oh, this is a problem-solving question. I'm going to use story B. And that way you're more agile and on your toes and not caught off guard when they ask a question that's completely different from what you prepared with. All right, and then finally, technical questions. This really is hard to go over without knowing everybody's industry. The more technical your background is, STEM, coding, engineering, the more likely you're going to get a technical question. But best case scenario is take a look at the position description to see if you can speak to the skills that are listed. And Google and ChatGPT are your friends for this too. Addressing skills you don't have. This is very important as well. Being honest about what you do or do not know how to do. And then your next strategy is to agree and validate how important that skill is to this job, and explain how you're taking action to gain the skill. So ideally in this scenario, you looked at the position description, you identified the skill you don't have, and that's your cue to either start a course, start researching something, or make a plan for how you'll do that when you start the job. All right, and then the question that is not a question, but is a question. Do you have any questions for us? That is usually at the end. And the answer is always yes. You always want to have, I would say, at least 3 questions ready to go to ask the interviewers. Your questions need to go beyond what's in the position description. So pay, position, vacation, things like that you want to avoid, and talk more about like the day-to-day of the job. Also getting a sense of like what it's like to work there, because this just as much as it's an interview for you, you are also interviewing them to make sure it's a good fit. I like finishing with just asking the interviewers if there's anything that was unclear about your responses or some form of that question, to give yourself a chance to expand on something or clarify something that they didn't think was clear. So some examples of questions that you could ask are here. I think after doing some research on the company and identifying what your values are in a workplace, this is a really good chance to see if there is a values match. Especially like this last question on diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of companies say that they value that or have initiatives, but what it looks like day to day is very telling. And so the response to this question really is eye-opening about how they actually live out their values. All right, so the tools to help you prepare talking points, stories, and questions for interviewers. Again, going back to that position description, looking at your resume, so comparing the position description, looking at your resume, going down each experience you have to identify places where you've used a skill or had an experience, and then starting to think again in that STAR method of how you could tell a story about that experience. I will go over to this spreadsheet, which should be, if Christina, you could share this in the chat, but this is from a book called Career Coach GPT. And the author created just this ready to go list of ChatGPT prompts for you. Keep in mind, ChatGPT does use a lot of energy. So if anyone is conscious of their carbon footprint, just know, use it sparingly or use it when you really need it. This one is nice. Interview questions based on the job description, as well as giving you examples of stories that you can use from your resume. It's a good place to start. I would not use the response as your word for word response. And then this one can help you with your company research. This one can help perhaps when it's time to ask the interviewers questions, kind of on that like measuring success or what training looks like for you. All right, so I want to stop there because that's probably that's a lot of information, but the most important part of preparing for your interview is writing down talking points for all of the questions you may be asked. So if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat or come off mute to ask them right now. All right. There will also be time for questions at the end. So of course, if something comes up, you'll have time to ask then. All right, so quick transition here. We're going to start talking about how to practice for an interview. Really, you just have to say it out loud. So the talking points that you created, it's time to start saying them like you would in a conversation or an interview. This can be really challenging for people. It's very tempting to write out a whole script. And if that's what helps you feel confident, that's great. But just be mindful of how it sounds when you're memorizing something or reciting something versus you're talking just naturally with a friend or a coworker, because that's kind of the tone that you want to strike in an interview, because it shows confidence, it shows you know what you're talking about. Also, taking some opportunities to have someone or an AI bot ask you questions that you're not expecting to see how you do, coming up with examples on the fly if one of the stories you prepared doesn't work. So in terms of tools, big interview, I'll show you that. LinkedIn has an interview review tool, but really humans and pets are great for helping you practice. Pets are always listening and providing positive feedback. Humans can provide some more constructive criticism, but you just want to get comfortable saying these things out loud. So let's take a look at Big Interview. So this is available for ASU students and alumni. You sign in with your ASU, right? And then you'll get to this page. So what I love too is this interview curriculum can help you prepare and think about, again, kind of like how to structure interview, your responses. And then let's see, then it's actually time, if you want to respond to questions, you can do practice sets, you can do interview roulette. They're going to throw random questions at you. But as you can see, they have somebody really ask you, then they'll have you record. And then when you're done, it will start to provide you with feedback. So what it looks like afterwards, this is on an individual question. So walk me through your background and experience. It gives you 6 categories. The pace of speech one is really nice. Counter, that's huge. Can be very distracting. There we go. And then power words is a nice one too. Here's a QR code if you want to take a look at it right now. And then LinkedIn has a similar AI powered tool. So I haven't played around with it as much as Big Interview, but if you just have the free version of LinkedIn, it's just going to give you these standard questions, and you also record yourself. And I believe it focuses on that speed and counter as well. It also is kind of cool. It will give you some videos with their experts giving you tips on how to answer each question. So really easy. It's just linkedin.com/interview-prep. All right, so you practiced, you prepared, it's time to actually go into the interview. And I really appreciate somebody who registered asked about how do you not get so nervous, or how do you manage your anxiety when it's time to interview? That is very, very important. So there's lots of different ways to do this. In our workshop tools, I linked an article here, some strategies, but really it just comes down to some positive self-talk, planning for the worst, and then doing some exercises right before, whether that it kind of depends on your personality. If you want to feel like pumped up, ready to go, there are things to get you more excited. If you want to feel calm, I would recommend breathing exercises. Let's talk about spheres of control, because I think this can be helpful with the positive self-talk. So thinking about the world, your life, there's always going to be things that you can and cannot control. In an interview, there's definitely some things you can and cannot control. So this is just a good perspective shift. So thinking first, what is out of your control when it comes to this interview? Really, the final decision is out of your control. You don't know the other candidates that are interviewing. You don't know if they have somebody else in mind. There's nothing you can do to know who they're going to pick, but you can influence the decision. That is the sphere of influence. And then going down to what you can control. Really, that's your thoughts and your actions. So thinking about what are the things you can do that are in your control to influence the decision. That comes down to practicing, preparing, and researching. So if you find yourself getting nervous, you can think back to the things you've already done, or pick one thing to do right in the moment to help you feel a little bit more prepared. And then some contingency planning. It is always good to expect the best, plan for the worst. I think we talked a little bit about what happens if you don't have a skill. If you can't think of an example, I think it's always a nice idea to say, that's a really good question. Can I take a moment to think of an example? And then that gives you the opportunity to be quiet and think, so it's not an awkward silence. If you lose your train of thought, not a huge deal. You can just make light of it, saying, I got so excited, or I'm thinking so much about this story, I kind of forgot where I was at. You can ask if you can start over. You are human, they are human. They know interviews are nerve-wracking, so it's really not a big deal. Sometimes it depends on the scenario, but I have been part of an interview where, unfortunately, the interviewee kept forgetting our names, and rather than asking us what our names were, she started making them up. So that was a very unfortunate situation. I would have much rather have just a moment to ask what our names were. Again, making light of it. I got so excited. I forgot your name. Can you tell me one more time? I think acknowledging, like we said in all of these, just acknowledging where you're at, that is the best approach to take. All right, and then dressing up for your interview. This is a question you can ask the HR rep or whoever is scheduling your interview. What is expected dress code? I recommend Googling. There's different terms like business casual or business professional. Best bet is always to dress up instead of dress down. This is an example, I'd say, of like that on the right, more that business casual, and then on the left, a suit is definitely considered business professional. When it comes to the different interview formats, different tips, even if it's a virtual interview, I still recommend dressing head to toe as you would in an in-person interview. And it just kind of gets you in the mindset that you are a professional. This is an interview. You are at home, but like you're in the zone. And then when it comes to interviews, definitely check the Wi-Fi. Make sure you have good lighting. Your background's professional. I say all of this because it's common sense, but it's still not common. Testing your tech beforehand. And then if you're going to use notes, do the best that you can to put them close to your camera. Like you can actually have a Post-it note or something. It's always very obvious when you look down to read, and that's not like the end of the world, but just if you know you need to rely on notes, I would put them close to the camera. So also with that camera angle, making sure that your camera is close to eye level as possible. I still see a lot of people they'll interview, and it's very clear that like the laptop is on their desk. This like lurking above you one here can be a little distracting. Here's one where the lighting's bad. So obviously on the bottom left, this is, a winning background and lighting situation. All right, when it comes to in-person interviews, arriving early is always a good move. I wouldn't say more than 15 minutes. Bring things that are going to make you comfortable. So water is a very good idea. You're going to be talking a lot. If they ask you to do a presentation, that's also nice to have. If it helps you to stay focused by taking notes, bring a notepad. And it's always a good idea just to have like maybe 1 or 2 printed copies of your resume. Every now and then somebody forgets or they don't have it in front of them. So that is very helpful and it shows you are prepared. Same kind of with managing anxiety, managing nerves. Taking a breath before you answer can be really helpful. Being mindful of the speed you're talking, but you're going to use Big Interview or LinkedIn Interview Prep, so you'll already know the speed at which you talk. And then just thinking about things that can play a role in how you come off professionally. Posture, sitting up straight when you're talking. something to practice because it exudes confidence when you're sitting up straight. I know there's some of us who are really cold a lot in buildings and we want to like cover up, but if you can handle it, stay straight and don't cross your arms. Eye contact is another tricky one. You don't want to stare down the person, but you do want to take moments to connect eye to eye. If there's multiple people in the room, do your best to look at different people. What about when you're on Zoom? You can simulate eye contact by looking at the camera every now and then. Gestures are fine. I don't think this is a huge deal, but culturally, like pointing at people can come off as aggressive. So open hands is a better idea. All right. So as I said, part of your performance is following up. So it is essential to send an email to ideally the hiring manager or the HR representative that you've been in contact with. I would say give it, like at least 4 hours. 8 hours is ideal, just to give yourself time to think and confirm that, yes, you are interested in this position. You don't want to wait any more than 1 day to send it. So ultimately, you want to thank them, mention something you enjoyed about the interview. Enjoy can be a loose term, something you like talking about. And then if you want the job, telling them you want the job. So this is a very short example. There's great examples existing on the internet, but gives you an idea. Thank you. Here's what I learned. I am still interested in joining. And then second paragraph, it's always nice to offer if there's any additional information you can provide, and just keep the tone really positive. There are some other messages to consider. Sometimes they may not respond. So if it's getting to like the 10-day to week point, you are certainly welcome to send a check-in message like the one that's listed here. And then let's see, sometimes we're not going to get the job that we interviewed for. It's still a really good practice to thank them if and when they send you an email with their decision. It really depends on the company and their culture, but a lot of times you're not even going to get a message back. So just know that that is a possibility. But if you do get a message saying thank you, you can consider this like a networking opportunity because now they know who you are, what your skills are. So asking to stay in touch is a great idea. You can ask for feedback, especially if it was like, you really thought you did great on this interview. You thought you were qualified and you're still confused why you didn't get the position. Again, they may not accept your request, but let's see, here's an example of a post-rejection message. And then one that includes a request for feedback. We'll do that one. It's a lot, but ideally including something specific that you want feedback on is a good idea. But again, keeping the tone positive. If you do get feedback, it can be really nice to actually do this over the phone because it's more organic. Just know, like, you may hear things that feel uncomfortable or critical, but you ask, this is your time to show your professionalism and really take in the feedback and thank them for providing that, not getting defensive or trying to argue or debate. All right, so I zoomed through all of that, but the key takeaways from all of this when it comes to preparation, we have those 4 steps, but truly, if you don't have time, these are the things that I recommend you focus on the most if you're crunched for time. So take a look back at that position description. And then usually the things that are at the top of each like section of the description are usually the ones that are most important. So take note of those. Looking back at your resume to see when and where you've used those skills, and then writing out talking points. At the very least, write out your tell me about yourself response, come up with 3 stories and figure out the skills that they showcase about you. Practicing out loud is essential, and then having at least 2 to 3 questions for your interviewers is another thing to prepare. So with that, tools and resources to leave you with. So Christina put together this amazing interview guide for you with a lot of nice handouts that are from ASU and our college on interviewing. I also have a Google Doc with a lot of the links that I shared today during my presentation. I want to specifically mention there's something called Indeed Job Search Academy. That's where I found that video, but that covers, it has resources and like webinars like this that are recorded on all aspects of your job search from resume to salary negotiation. So that is a great place to look when you don't have time to meet or go to a live presentation. And then career services team. For our College of Global Future students, Christina and I are here for you to go over anything related to your job search. Interview preparation is here. Mock interviews is something that we can offer. And personally, I've done a mock interview before, and it was the best thing by far I've ever done for my professional development, because it's so rare that you do get feedback on your interviewing style. So highly recommend that to schedule that with us. For ASU students and alumni, there is the general ASU Career Services. You can make appointments to meet with that team through Handshake. We already did these workshops, so we're at the end. I know there's a couple people who joined all 3, so thank you so much for being with us this summer. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who attended. I wish you the best of luck on your job search, your interviews. You're going to do great, and come see Christina and me if you want to practice or talk about your job search.